Okay, firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the ancestors, elders and families of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. As we share our own knowledge, practices, we pay respect to the deep knowledge embedded within the Aboriginal community and their ownership of country. We acknowledge that the land on which we meet is a place of age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal, and that the Kulin people's living culture has a unique role in the life of this region. On to the topic for this morning. I want to talk about the context, or why an online module, copyright as a risk priority, planning and early development, creating the content, the interactive software, reflections and a summary on the process. So, context. This module was designed majorly for teaching staff who are keen to do the right thing when they know what the right thing is as far as copyright goes. So why an online module? There was a confluence of new systems and new methods of instruction at VVU starting in 2015 with the commencement of blended learning and the block model, which is an innovative 4-week block for each subject, and each student does one subject at a time for 4 weeks, then they have a short break and move on into the next module. We had a new learning management system in 2015, Desire to Learn, and then eReserve Plus reading management in 2017. So there were a whole lot of new systems that people had to get across, a whole lot of new teaching methods. The teaching was redesigned within the block module. So there were a lot of new staff, such as learning designers who worked with librarians who were co-opted onto design teams, which were made up of the teaching staff, the learning designers and librarians. During this period, there was more and more dependence on digital learning resources, e-books and e-journals, a lot of audio-visual resources, and this all threw a lot of emphasis onto copyright. So copyright as a risk priority. Under the pressure of more access to more and more resources, to time pressures for the staff, there were restructures, staff were leaving, and yet the ones that remain had to completely rework their teaching units. So it was incredibly difficult to get academic staff to attend face-to-face training in copyright. I mean, it's hard at the best of times. Time pressures on staff to develop new teaching methods and resources were critical. There was a perceived lack of copyright knowledge by most staff and how to apply in a fully online environment. I mean, in my experience, most academics want to do the right thing, but often they don't know, and copyright is such a quagmire of nuanced rules and exceptions, etc., that it becomes quite difficult when they're focused on teaching their students, and then they have to kind of think about copyright. There was an element of concern about the reputation for compliance of the university, and all these factors drove the decision to go online for a teaching module. Sorry, I missed that slide. So we move on into planning and early development of the module. It was quite a journey for me, partly because I don't have a teaching background. I was a bit nervous about trying to present a training module for academics who their life's work is teaching. But initially, we drew up a business case for an online tool because I'm not a tech head either. I needed some technical expertise in the background to kind of steer me through this maze. There was collaboration from others in the library, and in particular from one of the college librarians, Sarika Singh, who had worked on one of the design teams and was quite experienced as a learning designer. She was really keen to test out this software called Articulate 360. So after a lot of backwards and forwards and testing and discussion, we decided to purchase an Articulate 360 RISE licence. And then it was over to me, creating content. This was an interesting journey for me. I mean, I've worked in copyright for a long time, but to break it down into nice chunks for academics was a bit of a trick. So initially, it was recognising what information teachers require, how best to present complex information, using a storyboard during COVID-19 lockdown. Just after we started this project, we went into lockdown and people started to work from home. So I was in dialogue digitally with my collaborator Sarika, which kind of presented a few difficulties because you couldn't sort of look over somebody's shoulder and say, I think we need to move this here and that should be there and this should be pink and not orange. It all had to be written, and there was a lot of backwards and forwards. So that was quite an interesting task to navigate. Another part of the project was selecting relevant content, images, the look and feel of the whole module, the colours, the audio-visual elements, because you've got to have some movement. And it's very hard to find video content about Australian copyright. If you go to YouTube or even on LinkedIn, it's all based on the American style, which is slightly different to our Australian law, but we managed to find a few examples. And then I selected a case study to sort of go throughout the module, and this case study was based on real examples of a lot of queries that I get during the course of my work, and it was based on the use of questionnaires. It's surprising how many people don't realise that often questionnaires are protected by copyright and you can't just rip them off online. Another one of the more difficult parts for me was creating assessment questions for an academic audience, because there was going to be an assessment at the end of this module, and it was very difficult to kind of find a nice balance between what was going to be too easy and what was going to be too hard. As sort of the subject expert, I guess, I sort of expect people to know a lot more stuff than they do. And I needed to sort of use the assessment to reflect back onto the content of what the user was trying to learn. So it was one of the more difficult areas to fix. So we get to the interactive software, which solved a lot of problems for me, I must say, because it had all these functions which made the interactivity much easier to present, and all I had to worry about was the content. So it has the ability to display text in interactive tables and flick boxes, ability to link out to other VU resources such as library guides. There was the ability to embed videos. Images were available from their image bank, so they were copyright free and easy to use. Ability to build quizzes and to show correct and wrong answers. So I've got a few screenshots now from the actual module. Hope you can read that back there. So on the left is the menu, which is on the left-hand side of the screen, and the little red circle shows you where you're up to, so you always know where you are as you move through the various sections. And if you click on the little arrows on the side, it will open up and expand and give you a bit of a session outline as to what you will find in those different areas. The next screenshot is of the flip boxes, and we use those to list some of the copyright treaties, so that there's a sense of the history of the development of the copyright law, which is based on worldwide IP laws. And then there's the text tables alongside of that, which I used in the area for the rules for statutory licence use, because the statutory licence covers text, images and audio-visual material, and there's lots of little rules that go with that. So you just click on the format that you're interested in, like text, and that brings down the information, or images and broadcast, audiovisual and audio. Then there are embedded video clips, as you can see there. That good-looking gentleman is a lawyer who's explaining what is an economic right. Because it was a linked-in video, we couldn't clip it to just the relevant part, so the whole video is sitting in there, but we've sort of given instructions to the user to just watch this section. But if they're really keen, they can watch the whole lot, because he goes on to talk about the Sony versus working men case, in which the song The Kookaburra and the Gold Gum Tree featured. And it's quite an interesting case, but I'm sure people won't be going there unless they're really keen. And then there's the quiz type questions, the assessment. With the case study questions, I didn't assess it, they were just questions to kind of focus people's thinking. So there's examples for a correct answer and an incorrect answer. So there's the ability to sort of explain to people why their answer is wrong or why their answer is right. Then we get to the final stages of the project. So once I'd sort of finalised what was the first draft, I suppose you could call it, it was a matter of getting people to test the module and to review it. And I co-opted a couple of librarians, my manager and a learning designer. And it was interesting, some of the comments that came back from them. Firstly, I used too many acronyms. I mean, who doesn't know what CC stands for? So I had to spell it out. At times, particularly with the question section, it was a bit ambiguous for people, and they didn't sort of realise what the answers were, so I had to go back and revise them. And like I said, that was one of the more difficult areas for me to work through. One of the queries was about the order of the topics I'd used. Because most universities now encourage people to use open access or open education resources, I put that as a priority before I went into, you know, the whole thing about statutory licence, etc., which is now used as a tool of last resort. And one of the librarians commented, "Why did you put that first?" And I thought about it, but I thought, to me, open access is very important, and it should be up there up front so that people know it's worth using. And also there was a question about my inclusion of the theory and history behind copyright, which I didn't make part of the assessment because the comment was, is that relevant for teaching? And I thought probably not, but it puts the whole copyright question into perspective. If it was me doing this module, I'd want to know the context. So that's one whole section covering theory and history of copyright. So reflections and summary, the final burst. One of the things that occurred to me that as we move more and more into this online training and teaching environment, it's probably important for librarians to have a bit of a background in pedagogical and instruction methods, because we seem to be doing more and more of that. I was really pleased with the collaboration and support of the library staff around me. I don't think I could have completed this without their support, and you know, it's the team, not the individual. One of the, I suppose, negative aspects of this module is that providing feedback from users and to users is difficult because the module sits on a central platform which holds all the university's professional development sessions, and I don't really have any access to that, and the only way that the users could give me any feedback or any queries is if they can be bothered to contact me by email or phone, etc. So that sort of puts a bit of distance between us, unfortunately. And At the moment, the module isn't mandatory. I did check the number of users before coming, and in the 6 months that it's been up, 46 people have used it. 40 of those are librarians because they've been told to use it. So it's an ongoing battle to get this module made mandatory. One of the reasons is that it's going to cost the colleges money because sessional staff only get paid for their teaching time. They don't get paid to do PD, professional development. So that means the colleges would have to stump up the dollars to pay for these sessionals to do a 1-hour training module. And I'm working on making it mandatory, so the story doesn't end here. Updating the module can also cause a few problems because it means it has to be taken down off the platform, the changes made and then put back up, but that's not insurmountable and can be done. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions.
Ingrid.
Thank you.
Oops. Thank you so much. It would be fantastic to have a resource like that in any workplace. Before you go anywhere, I've got a few questions for you.
Yeah.
So the first question, is this module open for other librarians to adapt and edit?
Because we've got an articulate licence, it's only for Victoria University, but, you know, it would be a matter of, you know, if you wanted to use it elsewhere, of you getting an articulate licence, and I'd be quite happy to help you sort of with the populating of that.
Okay. I don't actually know what an articulate license is. Is that your software?
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry.
That's cool. Then that's fine. It's me.
It's me using my shorthand again.
That's fine. We all do it. A second question. Was the online module more successful at finding an audience than your face-to-face classes? Or engagement, sorry.
Probably, although I think it's going to be a slow, long battle. I mean, I've organised face-to-face sessions and had no people show up, or 2 people. It's very disappointing, but at least, you know, about 6 or 7 academics have used this module so far, and we're hoping there will be more and more, because we're sort of advertising it through newsletters, etc. So hopefully things will look up.
That's good. And I find with these fantastic online modules, if they fit really well into your workspace, so, you know, you've got that dead time between 4 and 5 and you don't want to do anything else.
Yeah. And one of the good things about this is you can do section by section. You don't have to sit for a whole hour and do the whole lot at once. So, yeah.
Modular works.
Yes.
So another question. It's sort of any choice that we have to make it work that has legal ramifications that extend outside our work can be terrifying for those that have to engage with it.
Yes.
Have you had any feedback that's sort of from your users that have that's shown that there's that's helped them make these complex decisions?
Not really, no. I haven't really had any feedback at all. No, it would be good to hear back from people. I have to say I'm not a lawyer.
Yes.
So this is just, you know, based on my experience and knowledge, my interpretation of the law.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I guess related question, like this has, I think this is a complex issue that's owned by probably many people at Victoria University. How do you manage that relationship?
Oh, it's quite difficult for me because I work part-time. I'm a team of 1. I don't manage to see a lot of people face-to-face. Most of my contact is through email or Jabber or, you know, Zoom. And a lot of queries and questions come to me through the librarians. So they're usually the first port of call.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll answer the easy questions, and when it gets a bit tricky, it comes to me.
Okay. save it for Superwoman. That's a
Yeah.
good idea. How much does the software cost? Is it an outright purchase or is it on a subscription model?
I think it's an outright purchase. I can't tell you the exact amount. My email address is there if you want to ask me that in an email and I can get back to you.
Okay, that sounds good. And I think the final question, unless anyone wants to sneak any more in before we finish, is, I think this was a question I asked because I'm kind of interested, is, you know, we are an Anglo culture. We are, in many ways, obsessed with American culture because it's embedded in our culture.
Yes.
How do you help the user sort of decouple those two ideas? Because you can make very bad mistakes by just assuming that we have an American copyright system.
Exactly, and a number of times I have had to tell people we do not have fair use.
Yes.
Just because it's online from America and says fair use doesn't mean we can use that exception. We have fair dealing, which is much more restrictive, unfortunately. So yeah, it does present difficulties because people just think, oh yeah, I can use that.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
that in a movie
Yeah.
once. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. Big round of applause for Ingrid. And thank you. I have this pin for you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for presenting.